Hello, and a massive welcome to Swadharma IAS Academy.
Welcome, everyone.
I am your host, and I'm absolutely pumped to be back in the studio with you today. We are here for one reason and one reason only.
To get you that rank.
To take your preparation from average to top ranker. Our motto is simple, it is non-negotiable, and it should be the first thing you think of when you wake up: duty, discipline, rank.
That is right. You do your duty, you maintain your discipline, and the rank will follow. It is a pleasure to be here.
Now, before we open the books, here is the immediate call to action for all our serious aspirants out there.
Listen up. This is important.
If you are prepping for the TGPSC exams, Group 1 or Group 2, whatever your target, you need to like, share, and subscribe to our feed right now.
Don't wait. Do it now.
We aren't just chatting here. We are dropping high-yield, exam-focused content that cuts through the noise. We are doing the heavy lifting so you don't have to.
And today's topic is, well, it's absolutely crucial.
Today, we are tackling a topic that is absolute gold for Telangana history. We are heading down into the Krishna Valley to talk about the Ikshvakus of Vijayapuri.
A fascinating dynasty.
Yeah.
Also known as the Ikshvakus of Vijayapuri, or, and this is another key term, the
Sriparvatiyas. Okay. And just to set the stakes here, why does this matter to our listeners? Why should a student sitting in a library in Hyderabad or Warangal care about these guys?
It matters because this is what we call a bridge period. I mean, think about it. The Ikshvakus are the immediate successors to the Satavahanas in the Telangana and Andhra region.
The very next chapter.
Exactly. If you look at previous year questions, and we always tell you to do that, this era marks a massive pivot. We see a shift in religion, a massive shift in language from Prakrit to Sanskrit, and a revolution in architecture.
So it's a turning point.
A critical one. This isn't just history. This is the foundation of early medieval South Indian culture. If you miss the Ikshvakus, you miss the link between the ancient and the medieval. It's a gap in your knowledge that an examiner will exploit.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are stepping into a power vacuum, right? The mighty Satavahanas have collapsed. Pulamabhi IV, the last Satavahana ruler, has fallen. Who steps up?
Well, it is the classic story, really. It's the story of the feudatory becoming the master. The Ikshvakus started as Mahatalavaras.
Mahatalavaras. I've seen this term in the notes. Break that down for us. Is that a military title or an administrative one? What are we looking at here?
It's a bit of both, really.
Oh.
A Mahatalavara was a high-ranking official, a feudatory, essentially a local provincial governor working under the Satavahanas.
So they were the local managers.
Precisely. They had military responsibilities and administrative control over a region. So when the central authority of the Satavahanas weakened, specifically after Pulamabhi III, the central grip just, well, it loosened.
The cat's away.
The cat's away. And the Ikshvakus, who were already running the show on the ground in the Krishna Valley, essentially said, why are we sending taxes to a dying empire? And asserted their independence.
So they went from employees to CEOs because the main company went bankrupt.
That's a perfect analogy. And they established their sovereign rule. Now let's look at the name itself. Ikshvaku. For an exam, you need to know the literal meaning. It sounds grand, but it's actually quite agricultural.
It means sugarcane, right? From the word ikshu.
Correct. Ikshu means sugarcane. And this actually leads us into a massive debate about their origins, which is, and I can't stress this enough, a favorite topic for examiners to twist you on.
Okay, so this is a potential trap question area.
Definitely. There are two main schools of thought here, and you need to understand both to answer a descriptive question effectively.
Right, because when you hear Ikshvaku, if you know your mythology, you immediately think of the north. You think of Lord Rama, Ayodhya, the solar dynasty. It has that epic ring to it.
Exactly. And that is what we call the northern theory. Many inscriptions and later myths claim they are direct descendants of Lord Rama's lineage from Ayodhya, who migrated south.
Which gives them huge legitimacy.
Immense legitimacy. If you are a new king, a new dynasty, who better to claim descent from than the ideal king Rama? It connects you to this grand pan-Indian epic tradition.
But do historians actually buy that? Or is that just, ancient PR?
It is almost certainly ancient PR. Modern historians, and certainly the consensus for the exam perspective, support what we call the local or tribal theory.
So they were locals, sons of the soil of Telangana and Andhra?
Yes. The argument led by heavyweights like the historian BSL Hanamanta Rao is that they were indigenous tribes of the Krishna Godavari region.
Okay.
They were possibly related to the Chenchos or other local tribes who eventually became Sanskritized.
Okay, Sanskritized. Let's define that term. You mean they adopted the culture, the language, the rituals of the sort of high Brahminical tradition to elevate their own status?
Exactly that. They adopt the high culture name Ikshvaku to sound royal, to sound Aryan, if you will. But we have proof they were locals. Real hard evidence.
And what is the smoking gun here? What proves they weren't from Ayodhya?
The strongest evidence, the one you must remember, is a social custom called Menarikam.
Narikam. That's the practice of cross-cousin marriage, isn't it? Marrying your father's sister's daughter specifically.
Exactly. This is a distinctly South Indian Dravidian practice. You do not see this in the northern Ikshvaku lineage of Ayodhya.
Right.
In the north, marrying a cousin, especially under the strict Dharmashastras, is often considered incestuous, or at least highly discouraged. But the Ikshvakus of Vijayapuri, they practiced this extensively.
So this wasn't just a one-off thing.
Not at all. It was a core part of their marriage alliance strategy. It's a tribal custom that was elevated to royal status. This, more than anything, proves their local roots. They might have called themselves Ikshvakus, but they married like locals from the Krishna Valley.
That is a crucial point for the listeners. If you get a question asking for evidence of their indigenous origin, Menarikam is your keyword. It's the detail that wins you the marks. Okay, let's talk geography. Where exactly are we on the map?
We are in the Nagarjunakonda Valley. Their capital was a city called Vijayapuri.
Which is modern-day Nagarjunakonda, now mostly submerged by the dam, right?
Correct. The site was excavated extensively before the Nagarjunasagar Dam was built.
Yeah.
They're also called Sriparvatiyas because they ruled over the area of Sriparvata.
The holy mountain.
Yes. This entire region encompasses the Nalamala Hills and the incredibly fertile Krishna River Valley. It's a very strategic, defensible, and agriculturally rich location.
And when we look for evidence of all this, we are looking at inscriptions. But there is a discrepancy here, isn't there? The Puranas say one thing, the stones say another.
This is a classic historical puzzle and another great exam question. The Puranas, which were compiled much later, mention 7 kings ruling for about 100 years.
Okay, 7 kings a century. Sounds plausible.
It does, but when we look at the actual epigraphy, the study of inscriptions,
The epigraphy exam fact right there. Study of inscriptions.
we only have clear contemporary evidence for 4 kings ruling for roughly 70 to 80 years.
So do we trust the Puranas or the stones? For the exam, which one is the correct answer?
In history, we always trust the contemporary evidence. The stones were carved during their reign. The Puranas were written down centuries later. So for the exam, you focus on the 4 kings confirmed by the inscriptions.
Got it. Trust the primary source.
Always. The key inscriptions you need to remember are from Nagarjunakonda, Jagayapeta, Fenagiri, and Upugunduru. These give us the real timeline and the real story.
All right, let's dive into that timeline. The political history. We have 4 main players. Let's start with the founder, the man who started it all. Vasisthaputra Sri Santamula, or Santamula I.
A very, very significant figure. He ruled roughly between 220 and 233 CE. He's the one who formally declared independence from the Satavahanas. But what makes him unique, and so important for understanding a dynasty, is his religious and economic policy.
He was a staunch Hindu, right? A follower of the Vedic religion.
Very much so. And this is important because the later Satavahanas were leaning heavily towards Buddhism, or a kind of syncretic mix. Santamula is a revivalist. He was bringing back the old ways.
How so?
He performed the Asvamedha, the horse sacrifice. He performed the Rajasuya and the Vajapaya.
These are the big league sacrifices, the Super Bowl of Vedic rituals. Why perform them? Is it just about piety?
No, it is about power. It's pure political theater. These are statements of sovereignty. Only an independent emperor, a Chakravartin, performs an Asvamedha. It's a signal to all the neighboring kingdoms. I am the boss now. The Satavahanas are gone. I am in charge.
I see.
He was a devotee of Skanda, also known as Kartikeya or Mahasena, the war god, and Virupaksapati, a form of Shiva. But, and here is where it gets really interesting for the TGPSC exam, you need to know his specific title regarding agriculture. This has come up before.
I've seen this in the notes. Sata Sahasra Halaka.
Yes, Sata Sahasra Halaka.
Giver of 100,000 plows. Now let's analyze this. This sounds like a nice slogan. Was he just a philanthropist giving away farming equipment? Or is there something deeper here?
It wasn't just charity, it was state building. It was a brilliant economic policy. Think about the logistics of 100,000 plows. And not just plows, but also the bullets to pull them and the land to use them on. This isn't just a subsidy, it is a terraforming project.
Terraform, you mean he was literally changing the land?
Yes, Santamula wasn't just building an economy, he was physically altering the landscape of the Krishna Valley. He was taking a region that might have been dominated by tribal forests and semi-pastoral lands and systematically converting it into structured, taxable agrarian land.
So he's clearing forests to create farmland on a massive scale.
Exactly. And who does he give the plows and land to? The inscriptions are clear. Brahmins and farmers.
Why Brahmins?
Because Brahmins serve as the pioneers. They have the knowledge of the seasons, the rituals. They set up the agraharas, the Brahmin villages, which become centers of learning and administration. They organize the calendar for planting. They bring structure. By giving away plows, he is essentially commissioning the expansion of his tax base.
More farms mean more grain.
More grain means more revenue, and more revenue means a stronger army. That is why he is also called Mahadanapati Kariti, the great donor. But you must remember for your exam, the donation had a very clear strategic economic purpose.
That is brilliant. It's an economic stimulus package disguised as religious charity.
Precisely. It solidified his control over the land, the people, and it created the wealth that would fund the entire dynasty.
Okay, so that's the founder, a Vedic revivalist, a master strategist. Moving on to his son, and talk about a shift in gears. Virapurusadatta.
Virapurusadatta, a complete pivot. He's often called the South Indian Ashoka.
That is a massive title. Ashoka is the heavyweight champion of Buddhist history. Why the comparison? What did he do to earn that?
Because of his massive service to Buddhism. Now, notice the contrast. It's stark. His father, Santamula, was a Vedic sacrifice-performing Hindu who revived the Brahminical order. The son, Virapurusadatta, presides over the golden age of Buddhism in the Andhra region. It's a 180.
Did he convert? Was he officially a Buddhist? Or was he just tolerant?
That is a huge debate among historians. He patronized it extensively. But if you look closely at the records, it was really the women of his court, his aunts, his wives, his daughters, who were the driving force behind the donations and the construction.
Ah, okay.
He allowed it, he encouraged it, but whether he personally took the vows is unclear. But because the religion flourished so brightly under his protection, he gets the title. The buck stops with the king.
Let's talk about his marriage politics. This is high-yield territory for the TGPSC, I'm told.
Extremely high yield. This is where you see how they built their power structure. Virapurusadatta used marriage to lock down his power from every direction. Remember Menorikam?
Yes, the cross-cousin marriage.
He doubled down on it. He married 3 daughters of his paternal aunts.
3!
3. What does that do? It solidifies the clan loyalty. If your wives are also your first cousins, the families are incredibly tight-knit. It prevents internal rebellion from powerful relatives.
Keeps the power in the family.
Exactly. Yeah. But he didn't stop at local alliances. He looked north and west. He married a Saka princess from Ujjain named Rudra Patarika.
Wait, a Saka princess, that connects him to the Western Kshatrapas. That's a huge deal.
A massive deal. It shows that the Ikshvakus were not some isolated local kingdom. They were players on the national stage. The Western Kshatrapas were a powerful dynasty in Gujarat and Malwa. Marrying into their family gave Virapurusadatta diplomatic reach, prestige, and probably a secure northern border.
And he also looked south, didn't he?
Yes. He married his daughter, Kodabalisri, to the king of Vanavasi, who belonged to the Chutu dynasty in modern-day Karnataka. So he has the locals tied up with Menorikam, the north covered with the Sakas, and the deep south covered with the Chittas. It's a web of alliances.
A master politician. Now, regarding his religious stance, there is a controversial sculpture I read about. It shows a figure, often identified as the king, doing something quite shocking to a Shiva linga.
Ah, yes. The famous panel from the Jagayapeta Stupa. It depicts a royal figure, believed to be a Chakravartin or universal emperor, pushing aside a Shiva linga with his foot.
Pushing it aside with his foot? I mean, that sounds incredibly aggressive. That sounds like a hate crime in ancient India. Does that mean he actively hated Shaivism?
That was the early interpretation, that he was a militant Buddhist, literally kicking out the Vedic faith of his father. Out with the old, in with the new.
A very literal interpretation.
Very. But more nuanced analysis suggests something else. Many experts now believe this is actually a depiction of the Manthada Jataka story.
The Jataka tales, the stories of the Buddha's past lives.
Exactly. In that story, Manthada is a universal emperor, a Chakravartin, who is so virtuous that he conquers the heavens of the gods, including Indra's. The image might not be about disrespecting Shiva per se, but about showing the supremacy of the Buddhist universal king concept over the Vedic gods.
So it's theological one-upmanship.
It's a power play, a narrative scene from a Buddhist story. Not necessarily evidence of him banning Hinduism, but for the exam, what you need to know is that this sculpture exists, and it implies a very strong shift in royal patronage toward Buddhism during his reign.
Right.
And the proof is in the pudding. The great stupa, the Mahachaitya at Nagarjunakonda, was renovated and massively expanded during his time, primarily funded by his aunt, Santisri.
Okay, so we have the founder, then the Buddhist patron. Now we get to the third king, Ihuvala Chantamula, and this is where the culture really pivots again.
Ihuvala Chantamula, yes. If Santamula was the military founder and Virapurushadatta was the Buddhist patron, Ihuvala is the cultural peak. The most critical exam fact here, and I want everyone to write this down, is the language shift.
This is the big one, the transition from Prakrit to Sanskrit.
Yes, this is monumental. It's a game changer for South Indian history. Before this, inscriptions across the Deccan under the Satavahanas and the early Ikshvakus were largely in Prakrit.
Which was the vernacular, the language of the people in early Buddhism.
Right. But during Ihuvala's reign, we see the first royal Sanskrit inscription in the South Indian and Andhra region.
Why does that matter so much? Why switch languages? It seems like a small detail.
Think about what it signals. Sanskrit was the language of the liturgy, of high philosophy, of the elite high culture. It was the language of the Sanskrit cosmopolis that was spreading across India and even into Southeast Asia.
So it's about prestige.
It's about prestige and legitimacy on a whole new level. For a king to start issuing legal decrees and victory pillars in classical Sanskrit, it's like medieval Europe switching from local dialects to High Latin for official business. It signals a desire to be seen as a universal emperor rather than just a local chieftain. It elevates the dignity of the court and aligns them with the Gupta North.
That makes sense. It's a branding exercise for the dynasty.
A very successful one. And note this detail for the exam. This first Sanskrit inscription was issued not by the king himself, but by his commander, Ilisri. This marks the beginning of Sanskritization in the official records of South India, a trend that would dominate for centuries.
And it wasn't just language. He went on a building spree, right? But this time, it wasn't stupas.
No. This is the golden age of Hindu temple building in the valley. And look at the diversity. The inscriptions mention the construction of the Pushpapadraswamy temple for Shiva.
Okay.
The Nagarjunakonda temple, also likely for Shiva. Temples for Kartikeya, their family deity, and significantly, the Ikshvaku temple for Vishnu.
Ashtapujaswamy, that is the eight-armed Vishnu, one of the earliest Vishnu temples in the south.
It is indeed. This is hugely significant. It shows the rise of Puranic Hinduism. But even as he built these, he also allowed the construction of Buddhist viharas, like the Devi Vihara. It shows the syncretic, tolerant culture, but one that is distinctly swinging back towards Hindu temple architecture as the premier form of royal patronage.
It seems like a very busy time for architects and sculptors in Vijayapuri.
Absolutely. His commander Ilisri, the same one who issued the Sanskrit inscription, built the Sarvadeva temple, the temple of all gods, after a military victory, attributing his success to the grace of Kartikeya. So you see this direct link. Military success was credited to the Hindu gods, and thanks were given in the form of temples.
A fascinating period of cultural fusion.
Okay, and then we have the final ruler, Rudrapurushadatta, the end of the line.
The end of the line, as far as the inscriptional record tells us.
What happened? How does a dynasty with 100,000 plows, international trade, and massive temples just disappear?
Well, all dynasties rise and fall. Power is fluid. Rudrapurushadatta is the last known ruler. The decline, it seems, came swiftly and at the hands of a new rising power in the south, the early Pallavas, specifically King Semavarma.
Is there a specific record of this defeat? A victory pillar or something?
Yes, and this is a key inscription to memorize. The Menchikalu inscription.
Menchikalu.
It's the Pallava record that details their victory over the Ikshvakus and their establishment of control over the region. Let's look at that Menchikalu inscription a little closer. It's not found in the capital city. It's found in a temple precinct, isn't it?
Yes. And it doesn't just say, "we won." It specifically mentions the Pallava king Simhavarman performing a specific ritual, a Shanti ceremony after the conquest.
Shanti means peace.
Yes. This suggests a violent, turbulent takeover where spiritual pacification was needed immediately after the bloodshed. It gives us a glimpse into the violence of the transition. You don't perform a peace ritual after a peaceful handover.
That's a subtle but powerful detail.
It is. That effectively brings the curtain down on the Ikshvaku show.
So, from rising power to being absorbed by the Pallavas, a classic cycle. Now, let's zoom out from the kings and look at how the kingdom actually functioned. Section 3. Administration, economy, and trade. How was the place run?
The structure was quite similar to the Satavahanas, which makes sense. They inherited the system. The kingdom was divided into rashtras, which were provinces, and gramas, which are villages.
Standard operating procedure for the time?
Yes. And you had those Mahatalavaras, the high officials and nobles, and Mahasanapatis, the military commanders, running these divisions. Pretty straightforward. But what makes the Ikshvaku economy really interesting for the exam is the guild system.
The Shrenis. I love the concept of Shrenis. They are like ancient trade unions, or maybe more accurately, corporations.
They are exactly that. They were powerful, autonomous bodies. And we have specific inscriptional mentions of them. For example, there was a Parnika Shreni,
Parnika Shreni. Parna means leaf, so.
a guild for the sellers of betel leaves.
A guild just for betel leaf sellers.
Yes, and also a Pupika Shreni, a guild for confectioners or sweet sellers.
A guild for sweet sellers. That is incredibly specific. What does that tell us?
It shows a highly organized, specialized urban economy. I mean, think about it. If sweet sellers have a guild, it means there is enough surplus wealth in society for people to be buying luxury foods on a regular basis. And there's enough trade volume in sweets to require regulation, collective bargaining, and maybe even banking functions, which these guilds performed. It implies a booming urban economy in Vijayapuri.
Speaking of booming trade, we have to talk about the international connection. This is where it gets really exciting. We found Roman stuff there.
A lot of Roman stuff.
Yeah.
A large hoard of Roman gold coins was found at Nagarjunakonda. These coins, often called dinara or mashakas in local inscriptions, were likely used as bullion, valued for their weight in gold rather than as currency.
Dinara, that sounds a lot like the Roman denarius.
It's derived directly from it. But the most shocking discovery at Nagarjunakonda isn't the coins. It is what the archaeologists call the stadium.
The stadium. This is my favorite part. Describe it for us. Paint a picture for our listeners.
It's an incredible structure. Archaeologists unearthed the Roman-style amphitheater. It has tiered seating built into a hillside, a central arena, excellent acoustics. It is completely unique in South India for this period. You do not see this in other contemporary Indian cities.
So, what does this mean? I mean, my mind immediately goes to gladiators. Were they fighting lions in the Krishna Valley?
We don't know if they were fighting lions, but it certainly suggests public spectacles. Probably sports, wrestling matches, or cultural gatherings that were heavily influenced by foreign contact.
So there could have been Romans living there?
Some historians speculate there might have been a permanent Roman merchant colony in Vijayapuri. These Yavanas, as they were called, might have influenced this architecture or was built by the Ikshvakus to cater to them. Either way, it's a stunning piece of evidence for direct, intimate contact with the Roman world.
That is wild to imagine, a Roman-style stadium in the middle of Andhra, filled with people chewing betel leaves from the Parnika Shreni and watching wrestling.
It shows that Vijayapuri wasn't just a local capital, it was a cosmopolitan international hub. They were exporting spices, muslin, and textiles, and importing Roman gold, silver, and clearly cultural ideas.
Okay, moving to Section 4. Sociocultural history. You mentioned earlier the biparous nature of their religion. Let's dig deeper into that, because this seems like the defining feature of the dynasty.
This is the narrative core of Ikshvaku society. It's the key to understanding them. We call it biparous because the religious patronage splits right down the gender lines within the royal family.
Right.
The kings, as we saw with Santamula Sext and the Huvala Chansamula, were mostly Vedic or Puranic Hindu worshipping Skanda, Shiva, Vishnu. But the queens, almost universally, they were ardent Buddhists.
That sounds like a recipe for some very interesting domestic arguments. Honey, I'm going to go perform a horse sacrifice. That's nice, dear. I'm going to go fund a new wing for the monastery.
It sounds contradictory, but it implies a highly sophisticated and tolerant society, at least within the royal household. The kings allowed, and arguably funded indirectly through the queen's own wealth, these massive Buddhist projects.
Why, though? Why would a Vedic king allow his capital to become the most important Buddhist center in the south?
It could be personal conviction, but it's more likely a brilliant political strategy.
Hedging their bets with the gods.
Maybe. Or, more likely, balancing the diverse population. The landed Brahmin elites and the military class were kept happy by the Vedic king. The powerful merchant guilds and international traders, who were often Buddhist, were kept happy by the Buddhist queens. It's a way to keep everyone in the kingdom invested in the dynasty.
That is a very smart way to rule. Speaking of the queens, the role of women here is massive.
This is a previous year question alert. I can almost guarantee you will see a question on the role of royal women in this period. They were the true builders of Vijayapuri's Buddhist legacy.
Let's name drop them. These are names aspirants should know. Santisri.
Santisri, she was the paternal aunt of King Virapurusadatta. She is the one who renovated and expanded the Mahachaitya, the great stupa. The inscriptions are clear. It was her project. She held immense wealth and power in her own right. This wasn't just the king's money. She had her own resources.
And Bodhisri. She's another key figure.
Bodhisiri. She was an upasika, a lay devotee. She wasn't from the direct royal line, but was likely from an incredibly wealthy noble or merchant family. She built the famous Simhala Vihara.
Simhala. That means from Sri Lanka, right?
Exactly. She built a monastery complex specifically for monks visiting from Sri Lanka, or Ceylon, as it was called. The inscription mentions her dedicating merit not just to her own family, but to monks from all over the Buddhist world, from Sri Lanka, Kashmir, Gandhara, even China.
So Nagarjunakonda was a truly international center.
A global hub for Buddhism. And then there was Rudrapatrika.
The Saka queen from Ujjain.
Yes. She also made significant donations to a Buddhist monastery. So you have local women and foreign queens all controlling the purse strings for religious architecture. It shows the status of women, at least in the upper echelons, that was remarkably high and independent.
And with all these monks arriving from all over the world, they needed a place to study. This brings us to the university.
Sri Parvati University. Many historians claim, with good reason, that Nagarjunakonda hosted the first major Buddhist university in South India.
Like a southern Nalanda.
In a way, yes. A precursor to it. And the inscription suggests the curriculum was advanced. It wasn't just theology and chanting. It likely included astronomy, logic, and medicine. It was a true intellectual capital.
I wanted to touch on the art style briefly, the Nagarjunakonda style. We mentioned the Manthada sculpture earlier.
Yes, the Manthada sculpture from Jagayapeta. It's a masterpiece.
Right.
It represents the Chakravartin, the universal emperor. The art of this period is known for its tall, slender figures and a sense of narrative dynamism. They're telling stories in stone.
And they introduced a new type of memorial, didn't they? Something called Chayastambas?
Chayastambas, yes, literally shadow pillars. These are memorial pillars, often with the portrait of the deceased carved on them, and also viragols or hero stones. These were erected to worship dead soldiers or ancestors.
Why is that important?
It marks a shift towards memorializing the dead, especially heroes, in stone. It's the beginning of a tradition of ancestor and hero worship that becomes a huge part of South Indian culture later on.
Okay, Section 5. Social customs. We've touched on Narikam. It's clearly important. But there is a darker side to the social history mentioned in the sources, the practice of sati.
This is a controversial but crucial exam point. We find in Nagarjunakonda arguably the earliest inscriptional evidence of sati widow immolation in South India.
Really? That early? I always thought that was a later medieval development.
It certainly became more widespread later, but the roots, or at least early instances, are found here. It seems to have been specifically linked to the royal and military classes, the Kshatriyas. We see Chayastambas erected for military commanders, and next to them, smaller pillars for their wives, who likely committed sati.
Wow. How does this compare to the timeline in the north?
Well, the most famous era and inscription of the Gupta